So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really lovely to have you with me today. Thank you so much for coming online and to learn more about 6 steps to engage your employees all the time. Hope that you really get a lot out of today. So, I am here to help you with any questions that you may have or any issues that you might want to resolve with regards to engaging staff. So, it's really lovely to have you. And yeah, let's begin. So we talk about staff engagement, which I think is a really interesting topic because it's one of those topics that I think most organizations seem to struggle with a lot of the time. And there's a whole reason, a range of reasons for that. Some could be people aren't happy in their work, people don't enjoy the organization, people don't enjoy their manager, which is obviously a very, very big thing. People have lost their mojo. So there's a whole range of reasons why people don't enjoy working anymore for the organizations that they're in. I'm hoping that you can hear me and that you can see me. Should you not be able to see the screen, could one of you please let me know? I'd be most grateful. There's a few of you on the line, so if you can't see me, or not see me, see the screen, please let me know. So what we will be talking about is, do you want to have a positive and engaged people, workforce? Do you want to come into work knowing that your people are happy and loving their job? Do you want your staff to take the initiative and be powered? But do you often find that you have some engaged and some disengaged workers? And the real interesting thing about having disengaged workers is that disengaged workers actually cost us a lot in organizations in terms of tasks, outcomes, and also in terms of how we relate with each other and productivity. And when we talk about the cost of disengaged staff and work, it's really interesting that this particular statistic says that the Global Workplace Report shows that only 13% of the employees worldwide are engaged. So it's interesting that 78% of business leaders rate retention and engagement as important. In fact, 26% rate it as urgent, but the trends have remained unchanged for all of this time. In other words, only 13% of people are engaged. So what we're saying, though, is that the bosses and the CEOs and the leaders of organizations recognize how important it is, and yet it's not changing. So what are those things that are difficult? Why are so few people engaging? And how can we, particularly as managers and as leaders, do something about increasing their engagement? So this is just a little bit about me. There's quite a few of you on the line today, and some of you I don't know. And so just quickly a little bit about me, what I do. I've been doing this work for many, many years, about 20, 25 years. I'm a psychologist. I work across 3 different continents. I run an organization called Pure Magic International Business Solutions, and we do a whole range of work in leadership, team development, staff engagement, lots and lots of coaching, and just really trying to help leaders of organizations at all levels create highly performing teams and run great organizations. So we focus on the CEOs, senior leaders, and teams because obviously we believe that that's where most of the impact of organizations is. Coached many people. One female I coached actually won the 2017 CEO of the Year, which was so exciting for all of us. And I do a lot of keynote speaking. So just a little bit about me. And I guess it's always important, apparently, I'm told by somebody who coached me on how to do a webinar, that you've got to put your credentials there so people realize that you know what you're talking about. So there you go. Some of the work that I've been doing with some beautiful people, across different continents in the globe, which is just lovely. So what is engagement? What is this thing called engagement? So really what engagement is a feeling of loyalty and commitment and passion in an organization, where people actually come to work and they want to be there, a feeling that kind of extra zing in the step of employees. A feeling that drives innovative products and services. In other words, it's just those sort of people, I say, that when you walk, and you can feel it, like a feeling of energy and engagement and enjoyment that ripples through an organization. There's like that zing, that absolute kind of wow factor in organizations. And what's interesting is that some organizations have it, some don't. But also, I think the other thing that I have witnessed over a long period of time is that some organizations have pockets of it. In other words, there's bits here and there's bits there, but not necessarily throughout the entire organization. So how do we then create more of the zing throughout all aspects of the organization? And I always say this time and time again. To engage your people well, you have to lead well. And we know from research, and it was a recent research I read about, probably 4 or 5 months ago, that I think if my memory serves me correctly, 78% of people stay in an organization or engage in an organization and enjoy their work largely because of their immediate manager or leader. So when we walk around and there's people who are disengaged in their work and don't want to be there, naturally it could be because they're bored with the job or they've been doing it for too long. Yep, all those kind of things. But what we know from the research I've just given you then is that the majority of people are not engaged because of the relationship that they have with their immediate leader. So when we talk about engagement, it's critical to realize that people need a clear direction in their work. And, it's basically greeting them. It's showing interest in them. When we talk about people engagement, it's about the leader engaging with their people before their people engaging with their job. And how many times do we go into organizations where the leader doesn't engage with their people? Basic things. How are you? Greet them, talk to them, show interest in them, and ultimately make them feel as if they are the center of the world. First and foremost, pay them properly because people don't deserve to be underpaid. And neither should they be underpaid. But if you do underpay people and then expect the world from them, don't expect them to be energized. Or more importantly, if you underpay them and then don't treat them well, don't expect them to be engaged because they won't be. And so if you want to be a really engaged leader, be a people person, technically competent, but actually you don't have to be technically competent really in many roles, particularly the higher up you go. You've got to know your stuff, of course you do, but ultimately the real technical competence are the people around you. That's why you employ them. And I really love what Richard Branson says when he's asked the question, so how do you treat your customers? And he says, well, I don't look after my customers, I look after my people and they look after the customers. So I think the first outcome of this webinar is that if we want engaged people, we have to be engaged leaders. And that's a really critical point that I see, wherever I am around the world. And the question is, do you engage your people? Do you treat them well? Do you pay them well? Do you show interest in them? And then ultimately, do they become engaged in their work? So problem number one, team members come to work like zombies. I call them the walking dead, which is a bit cheeky. And I don't know if any of you have had the privilege, my son would say, of watching the show called The Walking Dead, but literally walking dead. They walk into work, look exhausted, drag themselves around work, and not really engaged. Some are rude, some ignore each other. Others walk around, as I say, like The Walking Dead, and some clearly don't want to be there. And I think that here I come again, that this is a leadership issue. If people are allowed to walk around like zombies is what you will get. I was running a leadership development program in Fiji the other day, and I'm going to say the same thing here I said to them. This is it. If you expect mediocrity, you will get mediocrity. If you expect excellence, you will get excellence. If you design a organizational culture and workplace that is energized and fun and people want to be engaged, that's what you will get, ladies and gentlemen. Energized, engaged people. So leadership is key, and creating a workplace, a workspace, I call it, where people can actually thrive is also critical. And I think that's very much around the leadership. But if that's not the case, the results that you get are walking zombies, the walking dead, as we said. People are unhappy. Many don't want to go to work. Often the bare minimum gets done. And so when leaders often say to me, maybe if I'm coaching leader, well, I just get the bare minimum, Karen. They come to work, they're not there. We call it presenteeism. Write that word down, presenteeism. So presenteeism, where people come to work and they're there, but they're not there. So they kind of, as we say, the walking dead, they get the job done, maybe the bare minimum, but that's it. So you've got their bodies, but you don't have their minds, and you certainly don't have their hearts. They've lost their mojo and little contribution from your team members. A classic example could be like when you're running a team meeting and you ask questions, so what do you think? Yeah, that sounds okay. Or, what would you like to say? No, that's all right, sounds okay. So there's no kind of contribution. In other words, I think if you haven't got the contribution, you don't have the engagement. The question is, why? And one of the real issues we often find is that the boss does not deal with the problem. So if you've got these walking dead, if you've got the walking zombies, what are you doing about that? What is going to change? Nothing will change unless leadership takes it under control and looks at what's going to happen or what should be happening. Disengaged people, I say, are like cancer in an organization, and I really don't mean to be cheeky or disrespectful, but they spread, guys. And as long as they're left to grow, they will destroy people in their organization over time. And eventually what you've got is an organization that's just full of the walking dead. Give you an example. I went to a government organization the other day, and I was going to try and see if we could do some work there. We were called in to have a discussion. First and foremost, the receptionist was dead. Now, what do I mean by that? We walked into the organization. She did not even look up from her computer to greet us. As she was typing, she says, "Yep, can I help you?" There was no eye contact. There was nothing. And I said to her, "I'll just wait until you finish." She said, then she looked at me almost like she was frustrated that I'd interrupted her. And she said, "Well, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, it's not what do you want. It's more like, what can you help us with?" And I actually, I asked her, "So if you don't want your job, why are you in the job?" And she got quite defensive. And I said, "I'm not trying to be rude, but actually I am your client, so it's really important that you look at me if you talk to me." So I did a sort of 5-second coaching session. There were 3 or 4 people walking in and out of the organization, equally as zombie-like, equally as disengaged. One of them was not particularly well dressed, had a swear word on their T-shirt. It was just bizarre, ladies and gentlemen. And I thought to myself, this whole organization is disengaged, and then that's what you got. And so what it is it's a leadership issue. This kind of zombie-like disengaged state has to be taken under control. So we pulled the leadership team together. This was in another organization, actually, I'm thinking about. Same sort of thing. We pulled the leadership team together, and we worked out a key strategy forward. And one of the things to do is to, do some leadership development around what are the sort of staff that they want, what is the workplace culture they want. That's really important. Do you want one where it's just autocratic and, everybody gets their job and nobody engages? Is there a silo mentality where people don't talk to each other? Are people collaborative? Are there workplaces and spaces or projects where people can work across different teams? All these are really important questions. The second problem we often find is staff morale is low. So Jane's Floral Stores, obviously it's not called Jane's Floral Stores. I'm just using this as an example of a company where we walked into. But people in teams walking and talking around, about each other. No real common direction. And an example I asked one of the departments in Jane's team, "So what's the direction of the organization or the vision?" They couldn't tell me. "So what's the vision of your department?" They couldn't tell me. So there's no common direction. They don't work together. They all work in little silos, or they work in their own little areas. So there's no engagement, not only in the organization, but with each other. There's no kind of practices, or there's no forums, or there's no opportunity, if you like, for these people to get together and to engage with each other. And it's not even so much necessarily across the organization, but it's down the organization in their own teams. And we did a staff satisfaction with Jane's Floral Stores, and of course the the satisfaction came out as low. What we did see were grumpy, disengaged people everywhere. So again, when we've got low morale, you've got to understand what the problem is. Where is the problem? And it's not, ladies and gentlemen, a problem of, natural attrition, Karen. People will leave the organization, and then what will happen is we'll get new people. I mean, some people could stay there for years, decades. So we spent time understanding what the problem was. Low morale is interesting. It does not happen overnight. Low morale generally is an outcome. So when I mean outcome, I mean it happens over time, that when things aren't changed or things aren't dealt with or things are allowed to become disengaged, then that's just what we do. We just disengage. And low morale is like the cancer that eats the organization. So we identified key solutions. And one of the things we did was we got the staff involved in the solutions to the problem. So we got a cross-functional team together after doing a staff engagement survey, which was just ridiculously low. And instead of the leaders solving the problems, we figured, okay, we're going to get some people in the organization to solve the problem. So this cross-functional team came together, and we designed 5 key strategies with them to move the organization forward. And one of them, for example, was to have what they called a charter. We called it a code of conduct. But essentially, they had a code of conduct which was on the wall in the organization. And when I asked them, so what was the code of conduct? None of them could tell me. The code of conduct was 26 things, in the code. So what it was words on a wall that nobody paid any attention to. It was never used. It was not powerful. And it was just literally something that was a waste of time. So what we did with this team was we got these people, this cross-functional team, and there were quite a few of them on the team, to design a new code of conduct, or charter as they called it, for the organization. And what was really interesting and the most satisfying, I think, thing here was that we got them then to, everybody around the table had to contribute, and we got them then to go back into their departments and ask their departments what they felt about the charter. And there were a couple of changes and additions and modifications, and ultimately that became their charter. Now, the reason why that was quite important was because the people designed the charter, and the people were then responsible for it, and that then was attached to their key performance indicators. So people then started to take their code of conduct seriously and use it to address and change their behaviors and make sure that everybody around them was responsible for it as well. It was amazing how small that strategy made such a significant difference. It raised the skills to exemplary levels over time. It took us about 9 months, I think, but still, it was a fantastic result. It was just one. There were many others, but getting people involved and getting them to come up with their own charter, and we focused on the relationships and getting the tasks done. Third problem ultimately is also sometimes an outcome, miserable people. And this was interesting. 67% of people at work are unhappy with their bosses and or colleagues. Many afraid to say something, so stay unhappy. Many get unwell, affects their health. In fact, this particular statistic that I've got at 67%, this was probably about a year ago, so I need to update that. It's actually higher. As I said, it's about 86%, I think it was in recent research. So the fact is that when we've got disengaged, miserable people, we've got lessened productivity, reduced satisfaction, people look for new jobs. And what happens is, in a large hospitality organization, this happened, lots of silo mentality. They lost their biggest client. 7 key people left the organization. They were miserable. Profitability suffered. The reputation was affected. And of course, because they didn't take on board some of the advice we had given them or asked them to think about, 8 months later, the issue was still not addressed. They lost 2 more major clients, and eventually the CEO was fired. And what was really interesting around this is that none of this had to happen. This could have been addressed a long time back had they actually taken the advice that obviously we'd given them, because we've done this before. This, when you've got disengaged staff, it's not a big issue that doesn't happen. It happens all the time. And the solutions to a technology company we had with the same thing. We spoke to staff again. We asked them for solutions. But what was important was that the CEO and his senior team were happy to act on some of the solutions that the staff came up with. And one of them was, leaders aren't well equipped to lead. They're not competent. They don't listen to us. And the senior team was really happy to be upskilled. So we upskilled them. We upskilled staff. We gave them more autonomy. They were more involved in designing their own roles. They were more involved in some of the executive decisions. We engaged them. We called behaviors that weren't appropriate and needed to be called. When, for example, a senior member of a team walked in grumpy and disengaged, well, the staff were able to say, hold on a moment, on the charter we have that we are optimistic and positive at all times. And they would then call a senior exec and say, you're not that today, and, what is going on? Because we decided when we designed the charter that we would call each other. So they started calling each other. It was really unbelievable to see. Um, and essentially the staff turnover drastically reduced, and the staff satisfaction survey increased by 57%. So, what we have then is staff that feel empowered and more engaged in what they are doing at work. And so it's a combination of leadership strategies to improve the organizational climate, but a key issue of these as well is to get staff engaged. So to give them responsibilities, to give them leadership roles, to maybe put them, in cross-project teams, create fun with them, create difference, create energy, I guess. Gary's Hardware was another one. We introduced a new way of doing things around here. Again, we also upskilled leaders at all levels. The leaders at all levels is critical. We got representative staff to design a new culture, which is what I said just now. And we encouraged and taught them how to create highly performing teams across all levels of the business. And we did a productivity study, and they had increased 37% in 9 months, and they recently won a national award. So the point is that when we talk about employee engagement or lack of engagement, it really doesn't have to be something that's a big deal. There's some key simple strategies that can be used in organizations to engage. And again, you might find some parts of organizations are more engaged than others, and I can guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, that if you've got one area that's more engaged than another, look at the leader. Start with the leader to see what you've got to see, who's more engaged and why the staff are more engaged. Largely, it comes down to leadership. So 6 key ways to engage your people. Treat them well. Number 1, treat them well. We talk about staff being engaged, but heaven forbid, let's talk about leaders being engaged. Don't expect your staff to be engaged if you're not engaged. Showing respect and fairness, just treat them well like you would your own family. And, it's just the things that it's interesting because so many organizations say, well, our people are our greatest asset, and yet don't treat them like that. So if you want a great team, treat them like a great team. Show an interest in them as people, not always about the job and, the productivity and the goals. Ask them about their families and their interests, and show an interest in them as human beings with a heart that beats. Have coffee with them occasionally. Take them out for lunch. Make them feel as if you value them. I can't honestly highlight that sufficiently. Create opportunities for their growth and development within the organization. So maybe put them on a cross-functional team, or get them to head a project, or maybe give them, secondment to another organization or a sister company somewhere. I always say this, it doesn't matter what continent I'm on or where I am, I say the same thing. At the end of the day, let's say that you are a bank and you lend money and you do home loans and all those things that banks do. At the end of the day, the only thing you really have going for you that's different to another bank, because they do the same thing, they do loans and whatever they do, lend money. At the end of the day, the only thing you've got different is the people that you have. And yet, if we don't treat them as absolutely exemplary with the most wonderful contribution and make them feel as if they're special, why would they stay? They won't. They'll go to some other bank who does the same thing, but has leaders who treat them well and they pay them well and show an interest in them. It's really not rocket science. This is really quite simple. Regularly assess how you can help them grow as employees. And so I often say, I was talking to an employee in an organization we've just started working with, and I was asking this young female, well, she was relatively young, 45, and I said to her, so when was your last employee, appraisal? She said, oh, probably about 9 years ago. I said, 9 years ago? So I said, so how do you know then if you do a good job or you don't? She said, well, I don't really. I just do what I do, but I don't really care, Karen. I get my money, I come, I do my job, I go home. So that's a capable employee, I presume. She presumes, because we don't know. Nobody tells her. But she's disengaged. She doesn't really, for her it's just a job. It's not a career. It's not a passion. And I don't know how it is for you, but I know how it is for me. I want my people to be driven. I want them to say, yay, today I'm coming to work. I want them to get excited and to be, whoa, what more can we do? And so I reward them as best we can. We're a small company. We can't pay them millions of dollars, unfortunately. But, they have other opportunities. They have travel opportunities. Some of them I take overseas with me, and I ask them about their lives and their, partners and their kids. And it's about engaging with them. Naturally, you can't keep all people because some of them are young Generation Y and ultimately they go on to bigger and better things. But I do believe that it's about how we connect. I guess that's what I'm saying. The way that we connect with them and the opportunities we provide to them and with them. And, the little things like thank them, encourage them, well done. What an awesome job you just done. I often tell my people what legends they are. I mean, I've got one of them. I mean, there's about 8 of us who are core. And I'm just thinking about one of them, MJ, for example. MJ is an absolute legend when it comes to designing things, brochures, posters, things that I just say, wow, how does she do that? And then I've got Charlie, who does PR and marketing, and she's an absolute guru on Gen Y stuff. She's a Gen Y. And I just say to her, you're just awesome. And then I've got, Gail, who does the most amazing thing around accounts. But I'm always telling them what a great job they do and how much I thank them and I value them. Now, the thing is that they, I also will give them performance appraisals where they need to improve, of course. But, when they do a good job, like MJ did today, I say, MJ, you're a legend. I'm so glad you're part of the team. And the important thing with what I'm saying to you here is that I don't think, says the research, and in my experience, I don't believe that we spend enough time thanking our people. I don't think we spend enough time validating our relationships. I don't think we spend enough time being loving in our marriages or being encouraging of our children. Let me give you an example. Probably about 2 years ago, I was doing some research on relationships, and one of the key outcomes was that the research was talking about that to have a happy marriage, we should be validating our partners 7 times a day. Now, that could be, sending a text saying, thank you for fetching the children, or I really appreciate everything you do, or, I don't know, simple, putting a, chocolate on their pillow, or running them a bath, or telling them how much you love them. Now, the research looked at the more you put good vibes into your relationships, the better the relationships are, and the more they sustain, they're happier. So, it's a really interesting thing, 7 times a day. So think about this. I was speaking at a conference a couple of months ago, and I was telling them the story. And it was really interesting. At the back of the room, I said, were there any questions? At the back of the room, a woman put up her hand, and she said, well, Karen, your philosophy of 7 times a day does not work. And I said, well, it's not my philosophy, it's research. But why do you say that? And she said, well, I've just texted my husband and I've just said to him, I love you forever. And of course, everybody, there were about 400 people in the conference. Everybody said, oh, what a fantastic, thing to do. And then I said, and what did he say? And she said, well, this is why it doesn't work. His response was, what do you want? So what do you want? And everybody obviously just died laughing. What do you want? Why did he say that, ladies and gentlemen? Why did her husband say, what do you want? Because, yes, exactly. Because she doesn't do it often. And when she does do it, it seems sus. It seems strange. What does she want? So if you take this then, that same thing I'm talking to you about, and you put that concept into your employees, if you only validate them and tell them how good they're doing and how well they're doing once in a while, they're going to think, what's wrong with him or her? What's, got into them? What do they want? But if you validate them on a regular basis and tell them how well they do, and obviously it's only when they do, right? You're not going to validate them when they don't do well. Then you start getting a climate and a culture of gratitude and good vibes and people wanting to try harder. So think about that. How often do you validate your people, or how often are you validated at work? Just a really important thing. Move them around into different positions, projects, keep them stimulated and energized. That's what they need, that's what they want. And it's important for all of us. I mean, why do we go looking for new jobs? Why do we want to change our careers? Because we want to do different things. Life grows, we develop. Think about how we can either move our people around or maybe even how we can actually add fun into our teams at work. I like the idea of fun, crazy hat days and, mad sock days. I like the idea of a cross-functional team organizing activities for organizations to have fun, to break down silos, trivia evenings, soccer days, all those kind of things where you don't have managers involved, you have people down the line. There are so many things that you can do to engage your staff more. And I just don't think we spend enough time thinking about it, because I want you to remember something. Mostly people, and I'm talking largely, there was research on Gen Y, so 18 to 33. Gen Y, by the way, are not mostly motivated by money. They are mostly motivated by what career progression and career development they can have in your organization. So just remember that. You don't engage people only by money. You do it by how you develop them, how you grow them, the opportunities you provide, the fun you bring, the workplace, the culture, and of course the leader. So we do lots of things like leadership and specific team development programs. We do 30 or one-day management and staff programs. That should be 30, not 24. And we do coaching and leadership retreats. So all of these things that I talk about today and every month in the ongoing monthly webinars, pop onto our website, have a look at what we do, and naturally, if there's anything in your organization that you feel you'd like some help with, we're happy to do a free strategic review. Happy to, come in and have a chat with you at no cost. This is just a little testimonial we got from a CEO who really, he was a CEO of a place called Lothala Island in Fiji, and it's probably the most beautiful place I've ever worked. But we were asked to come onto this island to do some work with his team, and we did, and it was just probably, what we do in every organization. So look at what the problems are, speak to the people, speak to the CEOs, speak to the people down the line, and we came up with a whole range of strategies, and we just had the most amazing thing and really helped this organization. So hopefully we could do that with you. So if you wanted to book a free one-on-one session, that's the time trade, as we call it. That's the link. You just go onto that and you book a free time, and you and I will have the opportunity to have a quick chat about what goes on, or if you would like us to, we can come in. What I will do after this session is I will get probably Rachel, one of my team, to send you an invitation with the time trade link to have a chat with us about what it is that you might need some help with. So it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Are there any questions that any of you might have or might like to ask me at this stage? I'd be really happy to help. Okay, so I've got a question from Jay here, and the question is about how can you tell the difference between a depressed and a disengaged employee? I think it's a really good question, Jay, and sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference. People like myself are probably more able to, only in that we've got the skill set to do so. But if I've got, for example, everybody else is engaged and, I think that things are moving along well and we're putting in strategies to turn the disengagement around and one isn't, I would be inclined to pull them aside and ask them questions like, is it the work that they're not happy with? Are they unhappy at work generally in terms of, the actual tasks they do? If they just tend to be quite low-mooded, like down a lot of the time, I'd be asking them about that. I would be asking them about whether they feel they're depressed. Do they ever have moments of happiness? I think this is a key thing in organizations where normally what happens is that we'll send them, go to HR, HR can fix this or deal with this. In modern day organizations, these kind of decisions or discussions more so are not necessarily HR discussions. They're actually your discussions if you're a leader of a team. You need to ask your people this. It's not inappropriate. It's not out of line. If our people are struggling with life overall, we need to know about that. So I would be asking, are you okay? The annual Are You Okay Day. Is there anything I can do for you? You might even say things like, look, I'm not familiar with depression, and I don't know how to resolve it, but maybe I could find somebody, or maybe we could send you to, the EAP that some organizations have. I think what I'm saying is don't be disinclined to ask your staff or your people if they struggle with depression. But generally, depression is that sense of lowness, that detachment, that sense of no kind of joie de vivre, no kind of happiness, Or they could be very low one day and quite manic and high the next, or one moment to the next. And that could mean clinical depression. Whereas disengagement could just be that they're tired of the people, they're tired of the job, the leader they don't engage with because they don't like that person anymore. So there are two different things, but they could look like the same thing, or they could be staff with both things. So I think the recommendation I would give is certainly to ask them. So I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming on today. It's been really great to have you. There's been quite a few of you on today, and I've really looked forward to seeing you today and also spending time with you. So I look forward to speaking to you next month. We will be having another webinar in October. Not too sure what the topic is. I'm going to have to check today, but information will be sent out today or tomorrow about that. So thanks so much for your time, and I've loved speaking with you. And don't forget to book your strategic review. God bless.